Timothy, popularly known as Timmy, was a very good little boy, respectful, obedient, and honest. He went to church regularly with his parents and was always punctual to his children's Sunday school class. Timmy had always agreed with Mrs. Hilda, his Sunday school teacher's teachings on pretty much everything until one Sunday morning, during devotion class, when she made a bold claim that left Timmy questioning everything. "God doesn't accept bribes," Mrs. Hilda said, with the authority of someone who has seen the world. Timmy's eyebrows shot up. God doesn't accept bribes? The idea seemed so outlandish that it clung to his mind like sticky gum. He mulled it over, tugged at it, and in the end, still couldn't convince himself that it was true. Finally, Timmy raised his hand, his face serious. "That's not true," he declared, standing up. The whole class turned to him, curious, while Mrs. Hilda chuckled softly, thinking Timmy was about to make a little joke. But Timmy wasn't laughing. "I've bribed God so many times and he accepted every one of them," he insisted. The classroom fell into a stunned silence. Mrs. Hilda blinked at him, thinking he might be playing around. "Sit down, Timmy," she said, still smiling. But Timmy wasn't sitting down either, his face edged with all seriousness. "God takes bribes," he announced again, this time with the full confidence of someone revealing a groundbreaking truth. Some of the kids started giggling, but others leaned in, curious to hear what Timmy had to say. "Remember the story of Noah?" Timmy continued, and most of the kids nodded. It was a story Mrs. Hilda had once told them. After God flooded the whole earth, Noah made a burnt sacrifice, and God promised never to do it again. That was a bribe. There was a burst of applause immediately after Timmy finished his explanation. To them, it made perfect sense. Noah's sacrifice saved the day, didn't it? Noah knew God loved burnt fresh meat and had burnt a lot of it to bribe God into not flooding the earth again. Only God knew what kind of seasoning he had added to make it match God's taste, so much so that he showed a colorful rainbow to display his satisfaction and seal their deal. The kids were amazed at Timmy's reasoning. In their eyes, he wasn't just a regular boy anymore. He was the genius who had figured out how to negotiate with God. Even little Jimmy at the back couldn't help but whistle a "Right on, bestie," along with a thumbs up. But Mrs. Hilda, although impressed by Timmy's confidence, wasn't buying it. She waited for the excitement to die down before calmly addressing him. "Timmy dear, Noah's offering was a way of thanking God for keeping his family safe, not a bribe to change his mind." Timmy shook his head stubbornly. "It doesn't have to be a thank offering, Mrs. Hilda. If you give someone something so they don't do something bad again, that's a bribe." Mrs. Hilda sighed, knowing she wasn't getting through to him. Timmy's logic was locked in place, and he had an idea brewing in his head that was getting bigger by the second. "I'll prove it," Timmy declared. "I'm going to bribe God again, just like I've done before." His friends looked at him with wide eyes, as if he were about to pull off the greatest trick ever. "And when he accepts my bribe, I'll show you." Mrs. Hilda stifled a laugh and asked, "And what exactly are you going to bribe him with this time, Timmy?" Timmy thought for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he plotted. "I'll give him my best toy truck," he said proudly. "The one I've never shared with anyone, not even Jimmy." The class erupted in whispers. This was serious. Timmy was going to give up his prized possession. "Good luck with that," Mrs. Hilda said, still smiling. She knew Timmy would soon learn that God's love wasn't something you could bargain with or bribe into action. Timmy went home, determined to carry out his experiment. He placed his toy truck on his bedside table, one he had dedicated as his bribe altar, knelt down and whispered, "God, I'm giving you this truck so you'll do me a favor. Please let me win the next spelling bee at school. I promise I'll give you more toys if you do." The next week, Timmy didn't win the spelling bee. In fact, he spelled catastrophe with a K, much to his embarrassment. But to his surprise, he didn't feel angry or upset with God. Instead, something clicked in his mind. Maybe God wasn't looking for toys or bribes. Maybe, just maybe, God was more interested in who he was than what he offered. After all, a lot of kids might be offering him their toys too, ones that may be better than his. God loves kind children, doesn't he? Timmy smiled to himself as he plotted his next line of action. This time, he was definitely sure God wouldn't be able to say no.